This is Jessica Taylor and Asia, what's your last name? Alsgaard, interviewing Carol Steele at 12:30 p.m. at Government Building A on June 17th, 2013. Can you please state your full name?
Carol Elizabeth Steele.
What's your date of birth, if you don't mind me asking?
That's okay. 8/1/62.
Okay. Where were you born?
Durham, North Carolina.
What are your parents' names and occupations?
My mother's name is Jean, and she's retired. She worked for a couple of different industries, mainly in clerical work. And my father's name was Fred, and he's deceased. And he was a government worker and a politician and a jack of all trades. Civil engineer to start off with.
Wow. Do you have any siblings?
I have 3 older brothers.
Yeah.
I'm a baby.
Oh, do they live in the area?
No, they're all 3 in Carolina. I have 2 in Greensboro and 1 in Charlotte.
Okay. What do they do, if you don't mind me asking?
My oldest brother is a computer guru who is currently out of work and has been for some time. Not a very good story. Sign of my family is a sign of the current economic state of the country. So he has lost his home, filed bankruptcy, maintaining and trying to do some consulting work, and basically living off of his wife's disability check. And my middle brother is a real estate agent, and you know how real estate went, and so he's starting to come back with things, and he's the one who's in Charlotte. Well, Charlotte seems to lead on the southeast along with Atlanta. So things are picking up for him, thankfully. And then my youngest brother is works for a motorcycle shop, selling parts and doing like the repair stuff, and it's very seasonal. And several times his employer, the owner of the company, thought they were going to shut down. So he is barely employed. He lost his other job with layoff with the economic crisis, and now he has to drive an hour to and from work each day for a almost just minimum wage type job.
It's a sign of the times.
Yeah, he's right now getting ready to lose. I mean, he's been on the verge of losing his house several times, and his wife's father has bailed him out a couple of times. So I'm the lucky one who went into the government steady as you go job.
Yeah.
I may not have made the money. My oldest brother was a millionaire before, and you know now he's nothing. But I'm just steady as you go.
Right. And when did you come to Gloucester?
26 years ago. Yeah, I've been in the county for 26 and a half years.
Wow. Why did you choose here?
I was in Northumberland County right before I moved here, and so it's about an hour's drive away. And the job, opening came up, so I came to Gloucester for the job. It was a step up for me in the department size. Had no intention of staying this long, thought it would be a 5-year stint and I would continue to go up into bigger municipalities, and fell in love with the area and have stayed and just very content. Right place, right time.
Tell me why you fell in love with it.
I think for the first moment of coming in to turn in my job application, because at that time our HR department was in one of the historic buildings, and so I just walked and I saw the court green and I thought, this place is gorgeous. And I had gone to graduate school and I'd been in Richmond. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I've been in big metropolitan areas and stuff. And after living a little over a year in Northumberland, where it was a 30 or 40-minute drive to a McDonald's or anything, there was nothing. And Gloucester was huge. Compared to where I had been, so it felt right. It wasn't too overwhelming, and I lived in the Fan in Richmond and stuff. I'd sort of already been there, done that, and this looked like the kind of right-sized community. So it was just really pretty and good opportunity.
Well, from your job's perspective, what challenges does Gloucester face that Northumberland or Richmond wouldn't?
there's an identity crisis going on here that Gloucester doesn't know who it wants to be when it grows up. Are we urban? Are we rural? Are we suburban? And I've been complaining about this for a long time, wishing that our government leaders would help the community make that decision, and then the policies would fit that. Northumberland, in the year, I've been gone for so long, but at that time, Northumberland knew it wanted to stay rural. They didn't want big stuff coming in. They would have died if a Walmart would have wanted to come there, you know. Things may have changed now, but Matthews, keeping up, I know Matthews better, still today, they know they don't want with so much development. We have an industrial park. We have a large plant operation there. If we had train or shipping, we would have more industry. People want that. But at the same time, they like the rural area. People move here from Newport News, from Norfolk, from Richmond, trying to get away. A lot of retirees coming here. So you have this mix of, what do you have? Right now, there's a challenge of, do we preserve a major strip of land for another alternative route to Interstate 64? And because there is no exit off of 64 to Gloucester. You've got to go through West Point, you got to go through Newport News. But if we had through 199 a more direct access through Williamsburg, the county would probably grow in size. So you have some people who are saying, that's a great idea, I can get to work 30 minutes faster, get out of this rat race of the traffic, and I can zip over to Williamsburg, and people from Williamsburg can come here easier. And then there's another part of the community saying, absolutely don't do that, because if you open up that door, this county is going to go boom and explode, and we don't want that. So I think that's probably, when you say different than other communities, we face the same challenges. From a work perspective, Parks and Recreation is always on the low end of the totem pole. We don't have enough money, but that's the same anywhere. Mm-hmm. But it's an identity crisis, I'd say, to be our number one.
If you had to kind of describe the different sides, who's on what, not who personally, but what characterizes one side? Is it older people or younger people or newcomers? Or
I think there's, with stereotyping, most newcomers want more services. Some move here to get away from things, but I think they still want the services. I think more the older people are very comfortable with the way it is. You know, more population means higher crime, means more traffic, more things that they're not going to want. What I would like to see is, you know, this sort of idealism that doesn't exist or isn't out there, but when I think about a Boston or a Seattle or a Portland or an Atlanta or Charlotte, things that, cities that attract people of y'all's age to come and live here and bring your talents and bring my Social Security check funds as you're employed. You know, why would somebody young want to move here? And so I would like us to develop with our internet, with our green economy and things, so that we would be an attraction for talent pools. And that means some change, but that does not mean a plant, an industry like that, you know, a factory, a warehouse.
Right. How can Parks and Rec help implement that?
I think the green spaces, the opportunities for recreation are very important. I went to Seattle with my 14-year-old last year and exploring some of the parks around and just kind of wanted to get off the beaten path and like, what would it be like to live here, not just the tourists. And we went to one park that it was just great seeing people play ultimate frisbee right next to people who were playing football, next to these people who were doing fighting as knights, you know, jousting kind of stuff almost. Yeah. I don't even know what you call it. I mean, it was this just great mix. And there were hundreds of people in this park. It's still a small park. It's probably not even a 20-acre park. And almost everybody was young. I mean, there were some young families, but there were 20 to 30-year-olds. And playing all these games and sports together. So I think if we provide the venues and the leagues, then people are going to want to participate. And we have a crazy one going on right now, which is kind of the retro, everything goes retro, it's kickball. And kickball is big. Young people want to play in kickball leagues because you played in PE class or something, you have fond memories of it, now you get to really, you can actually kick that ball far and hard. So if we offer things like that, I think it will attract younger people.
And I know that you specifically have been, I saw the stuff about Woodville Park.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Your vision for it?
I talk about my parks, I mean, that sounds very possessive. I talk about the county's parks almost like you do your children. And that you've got one who's got this, that excels in this, and one excels in that, and one maybe needs a little bit more care right now. And when you have to create or divide up the budget, it's very hard. You know, there's moms and dads who say, I give this amount of money at Christmas to every single kid, and I count all the little dollars because they're trying to be fair. And I find, you know, that that's kind of similar to what I do, that I'm managing all these facilities that have these needs. And it's hard because you don't want to choose a child over another one, or you don't want to put one park as a higher importance. But being honest, after saying all that, Woodville is my baby right now. Beaver Dam Park is the county's, has the largest waterfront, 635-acre lake, and it's established for over 20 years. I was there from the beginning, helping go in front of the bulldozer of where trails were going to go, and I had great experiences there. So it's still a wonderful memory and a great facility. But right now I'm helping Woodville learn how to walk and get out on its own. So it's a one-of-a-kind story, and we just nominated it for Best New Park or Best New Facility for the Virginia Recreation Park Society's award process. That went in on Friday, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. It is, as I said in the nomination, it's not Best New Facility for the state-of-the-art type widgets or gadgets and things like that. It doesn't have that. It's Best New Facility because it was created against every kind of barrier and wall that we could face, number one being funding. And we have a man here in the county who has given over $1 million worth of in-kind labor and equipment use to build that park. And without him, it wouldn't exist. Prior to him was a lady who gave the land, who gave 100 acres of land. And she was inspired by her childhood from a lady who gave land in Nebraska. And she went back and saw this park to take her grandson to show her, oh, this is where I played, and she had loved this park. Her parents were both journalists, and they ran a newspaper, so she was a latchkey kid back many years ago, and very safe, could go to the park every day on her own and just play and everything. And so she goes back as an adult, and she reads that this lady named Grace Abbott, who was one of the leaders in the playground movement, gave the land. And so she comes back to Gloucester and says, I got a lot of land, I'm a realtor, I want to give land. And we started a relationship, and she gave the 100 acres, and then through Chris Clifford's talents and time, we've been able to build it. And then we've put over $2 million in with grants and donations and his in-kind time and other people's in-kind time, and less than $40,000 in tax dollars.
Wow.
So, over 2 million to 40 doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Unless you get somebody who's really a super millionaire and they just give, a Bill Gates type who says, go do this, but that doesn't happen. And they're not the people, I love what they give, so I don't mean that in a bad way, but those are people who write checks. This man actually goes out and builds it. He lets his company run itself while he comes and does the work and gets on the bulldozer and the excavator and the tractor and has built this for us.
So this is Chris Clifford, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is the name of the woman?
Arlene Lanciano. And she had 4 children, and one's in Michigan, one's in LA, and or he's in California. I can't remember if he was in LA or just maybe San Diego or something. I can't remember. And then one's here locally, and one's in Matthews. Okay. And 4 kids, we're still talking with them and continuing, hopefully, their mother's legacy.
That's wonderful. So in between Beaver Dam and Woodville, how has your vision changed over time?
Beaver Dam was set as a water access, and we still need more of that. We need more river access. We've got a lot of problems where we have these what we call end of the road boat landings. where the road, when it became a state road, VDOT, or Department of Transportation, owns it down to the waterfront, and there's enough space that maybe you can get one car in there. And we have a lot of NIMBY issues, not my backyard, where somebody's next to the boat landing. They don't want people actually using that boat landing. So the vision of providing broad services, we're still lacking in there. What Woodville has provided are the athletic facilities in one location. We have other parks where we've got like 3 fields here and 3 fields there, but we will have 7 fields and maybe more all at one site. The part that I also, you can go to sports complexes anywhere, and you just go in and maybe they look like a high school or something, but just, fields after fields and a concession stand. Woodville has the pond and a wedding garden and a memorial garden with a raised boardwalk through the woods, and plans for an amphitheater and a performing arts barn and stuff. So in meeting needs, it will meet things that Beaver Dam never could, and the other existing parks we have can't either, because it's this mix of all your fields in one place to attract for regional games and things, and then the cultural arts and the gardens that we don't have other places. Mm-hmm. It will be a one-stop shop.
Yeah. Do you feel like use of the parks has changed since you've been here?
The athletic and soccer was very much just growing by leaps and bounds when I came here. It was like, how many soccer teams can you have? Now we've gone through field hockey, which has grown and holds its own. We have lacrosse now coming online, and flag football for adults, and a kickball. So there's some trends and things, and we try to stay up with them. Because we're more on the rural side, we'll see it happen. Like lacrosse went crazy 3 or 4 years ago in Richmond. So you can just kind of expect eventually it's going to get here, and now it is.
That's really interesting that they're a little later to catch on to trends.
Yeah, people make jokes about Virginia. Something will happen, and years later, Virginia finally gets with the program because we're so behind and so conservative. Well, within Virginia, there's Gloucester. So, Northern Virginia is going to lead the way, and then Tidewater east of us, and then we'll finally catch up.
Makes sense. Do you feel like the new parks that have these cultural arts and stuff like that they fit into the vision of Gloucerites in general? Can you expect a wide?
I hope so. I mean, it's definitely what I would want, because that's something, I used to laugh at one of my peers, who I won't say his name because I sure wouldn't want it down for the record, but we were speaking together and making a presentation to a group of county administrators trying to explain how rural parks and rec departments go, and supporting that other counties that didn't have a foreman. And he got up and he said, well, I like to program what I like to do. So I take golf trips. And I thought, wow, he didn't go to school in recreation. It's not what we want, it's what the community wants. And that's why we do needs assessment surveys, and we come back, continually and making sure we are meeting the needs. So having said that, I hope that I'm correct in that there is a desire for more cultural activities in the county. We have a local theater group that's very much supported, and they've been trying for years to get their own facility. While I'm saying I want young people, I recognize statistically where we are. Virginia has a higher older adults population than the rest of the country, percentage-wise, and Gloucester has a higher within the state. So we are a place that is aging big time. I'm hoping to balance that some, and I think where we are, there's population growth, not huge amounts, but it's steady. So I don't think that we're not like a dwindling community that's going to age out and go away. But we've got a lot of seniors here, and it's our job to program for them as well. Mm-hmm. We have a group called Best Years Club, and it's a day trip group mainly. And we take them to Fredericksburg and Virginia Beach and other places, but to local theater, and they love it. Our trips fill up all the time. So that's an indication to me, well, if we had theater here or more musical performances, when the symphony does come, the once a year, it's packed. I think people do want it.
Absolutely. And I actually just talked to the other side of that, a 90-year-old woman who loves the cultural stuff that y'all do, and is a really, a huge fan of the parks, and she said that she loves the new traditions that y'all have created in the last 20 years and 30 years, like the Halloween parades and the daffodil festivals that have gotten larger. Can you comment a little bit on these kind of like year-round public events that people look forward to?
Yeah, I think it does make a community. I'm glad that she said that and recognized. And I think back in my childhood to things that went on that, you know, you do remember them. It's kind of like when you ask somebody about your second grade teacher, your third grade teacher, you can remember those things. You can the influence that they had on you. So the special events are part of the community, and we hear that people who grew up here that have, in their entire life, there has been a daffodil festival. And they now come home from college, or they come home even beyond the college age, because that's what you're supposed to do, is the Daffodil Festival, come back home for it. It becomes like, you know, the true homecoming event. And that just feels great, you know, to hear that. Pride in place is a phrase that Margaret Parrott, one of our dear friends in Gloucester who moved to Maine but still keeps up with us, that she would, you know, say we need to have pride in place, and I think our festivals do that. They honor our heritage in like the daffodil industry. I think we're very proud of that, even though you don't see it the same way that it was going on in the 40s. We still have Brent and Becky's bulbs and a lot going on there, and many tourists who come to see their place and to hear Brent speak or Becky speak. And then I think that the small town kind of thing that you want to feel, that Norman Rockwell and our main street is this eclectic, architectural, fun street that's got all kinds of generational things going on. And so when you have our Main Street Association sponsor the Halloween event, and they're closing the road down, and they're letting all these kids come out, and they're going store to store and stuff, they are going to remember that all their lives. And they're going to want their kids to have those same experiences. So it's just neat. And we're involved in a variety of them. The last few years has been a little bit more of a challenge because we were involved in not controversial events, but celebrating the sesquicentennial of the Civil War. Our department has been a leader in that. Working very closely with the Citizens Sesquicentennial Committee, and we've sponsored a number of events. And it's the first time we've ever had like different sides, you know, and some controversy with it. Most of the things we're doing are so pro, nobody can see anything wrong with it. If Battle of the Hook is a huge event we held 4.5 years ago, and we'll be holding again this October, and that's Revolutionary War. And everybody's on board, you know. Hate the British together, you know. But Civil War, we've had within our own committee some challenges. We had one committee member who was going to quit and didn't like what was going on, so we've tried to offer a balance of it. But personally, I've tried to, you know, it's been a challenge for me personally. Like, oh gosh, how do you say, you know, if you even just tell people we were doing something Civil War, some people don't want to even hear the term. They don't want to know about it. Which is a shame because it's history.
Yeah.
That's been a little different.
Mm-hmm. Well, about the Civil War
I had to learn how to say it, and I finally did sesquicentennial. And I learned how to spell it too, but it took years.
The thing that happened, how does it help develop pride in place for people?
We have the product that's going to come out. This is another thing I like about special events, is when you have a lasting impact, not just the memories or the cultural traditions, but when you actually have a product that comes out of it. When we had our 350th anniversary, we did several things. When we've done other events, we've had archaeological digs or something that would be tied that would give a lasting thing. Mm-hmm. So with the sesquicentennial, we have a volunteer who's doing a research project that is extensive, and we will be publishing his work. And there are stories there that are untold. And he has researched basically every soldier from Gloucester County. And Gloucester wasn't as bad as Bedford was during the World War II, where, you know, Bedford lost so many people that they put the national monument there. But in a percentage-wise kind of thing, Gloucester lost a lot of people during the Civil War. And it just, I mean, the names are families that we still see today, and so people remember, this is my ancestor who died, and we have the monument with the names on it and stuff. But there's going to be stories that are going to come out of that, and so thankful that this volunteer took that on, and he's done everything from graveyard cemetery research, and we're GPSing graveyards that we didn't know existed before. He's got information on different skirmishes. I mean, it will be quite a publication.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting because you're coming from Durham, but you're also recognizing that a lot of the Pride and Place is based in family history.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's sustainable over time?
You know, the pendulum will go one way and go another way. I think the pendulum's coming back, that families are regrouping out of necessity economically. And so where we used to have generations live together, and then everybody's beat feet and got as far away as they could, and, you know, Skyping back home now, it's changing, and I'm hearing and seeing, and I'm living proof of it, as my mother has been with me for a dozen years now, of intergenerational things. So I think if people are together, then those stories and those things are going to stay around a whole lot more than if one person's on the East Coast, one's on the West Coast, and people don't live together. But
Yeah.
I think as our population ages, which is a reality, and in our study, in our profession, we've, you know, what are they calling it? There's a lot of different kind of names, but it's a tidal wave, but it's a silver tsunami, you know, that is just coming, and we've got to prepare for it, and it's a reality. And most of us don't want to kick our loved ones out to a nursing home. And when my mom moved in with me, she said, I'm leaving this house feet first. You know, don't go put me somewhere. And it's my intention to honor that. And although I've told my kids I'm not doing that to them. But anyway, that's another story. But I think, you know, more people are going to live together because they want to have older people with them. And it might be, there's some really neat, you know, changes to that. It doesn't have to be a traditional way. There are these little pod houses that, you know, that, I don't know if you guys have seen them, that they're like it's a little pod thing. It's like a trailer, but and you can put it in your yard. And we're not zoned for that yet, but this is one of the things that's going to happen is you want this loved one, but they take it away when that loved one's gone. So you don't have to go add on to your house. You know, it's completely ADA compliant, you know, and you can have all that they need. They're right there in the front yard or the backyard or the side yard with you. And they're not in a nursing home, but you're not having to make $100,000 improvement to your home, and they have their own space. So who knows what it's going to look like, but I think it's coming.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially because nursing homes are outrageously expensive.
And there's a lot of problems there. How can Main Street better, not be ADA compliant, but better brace itself for the geriatric tsunami?
I think ADA compliance is a part of that, and our sidewalk curb cuts and things that we've added over time and will improve upon, that's a necessity. The green spaces, little pocket parks and things that have been discussed, I think that'll help, and that will be for everyone. Where people can walk to the grocery store and from a more modern, not nursing home, but I can't think of the name of what Sanders calls their new facility, but it was the first in the state of Virginia, just down the street, and it's a new type of living, and it's housing, you know, for older adults, but it has a new name because it's totally different. But you know, to be able to walk to the store and all that, to have, well, maybe you want to sit down. I think in Northern Virginia, where my friends live, going and looking at their little walkable communities, they all have green space. Mm-hmm. And benches and things.
Do you feel like Main Street has always been walkable?
To a certain degree, and I have fought for the bricks not to be replaced within the court green that are lumpy and bumpy. When I go to Colonial Williamsburg, if I am in a wheelchair, I'm not going to be on their sidewalk, or if I'm pushing somebody, because it is just like this the whole way. But it's the way it was. We do have a street, and in their case, they can, because the Duke of Gloucester is closed, though somebody who needs to ride a scooter or something like that can be right next to it. So I like having it, you know, where it's all accessible, but I also don't want to lose some of the charm. I think that people have walked Main Street for years and years, at least the whole time I've been here. I think there's more people walking today than there were. I think that's due to the charm, due to people walking for health. There are some conflicts, and maybe some of those can be improved upon. Some communities you go, the bikes will ride on the sidewalk. We don't have room for them here. They run over the people. It's, you know, there's where the bikes go and where the joggers go. And so it's narrow sidewalks, and if we can make it wider and better, that's great, but some places we can't. We've got one of the surveys, I'm trying to think what it was, lately that just came through that talked about the lamp pole in the sidewalk. And when they did the Main Street improvement, you cannot get a wheelchair. I know it was on the Daffodil Festival survey, that's where it came from. Somebody was trying to get around, and the sidewalk was only so narrow, and then you put a lamp pole in it. You kind of got to go around, and you got this much on this much and this much, and it's almost impossible to get around. So hopefully some architectural things will take place with time, but the funding is not there so much.
Right. Do you feel that the businesses that are there can both attract tourists, but also facilitate the population that's already here that's aging?
I think they can, and I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and share a personal view, which would not be appreciated by a number of people. Some of the older businesses that are on or just off Main Street, I find they're not friendly, they're not welcoming. And in our promoting of tourism and customer service, we've tried to gently kind of remind people, when you walk into a place for the first time and you're looked upon as like, that's a stranger, who are they? And it may be that you're curious, but your look is not pleasant. It's not welcoming. There's some of that goes on, but I think that needs to change. I am happy with the new businesses that have come in that I'm not seeing that. It's the older businesses that are kind of maybe feeling, I don't know whether they feel pushed out or grumpy or whatever, but I've dealt with some grumpy businesses on Main Street, both as a citizen and as a tourism person, that, you know, they didn't like the Daffodil Festival. Well, nobody comes to my store and buys anything that day. They just come in here and shoplifting goes up. And so I think they all can be more accommodating, and it's just whether they want to be. And probably the best thing that has happened has been the Main Street Association, and specifically Jenny Crittenden and what she has done. And when you have somebody who is bright and cheerful and attractive and just enthusiastic, you can't help but get on board. And it's hard to be grumpy around Jenny. And I was on the original Main Street Association, or Main Street Committee. And we went through a number of employees, all decent people, but nobody pulled it together like Jenny did. And with Adrian and Joseph, Adrian Ryder Cook, and with Edwin Joseph, what they did financially and what they're continuing to do through his legacy and her gifts made a huge difference too. So I'm glad to see change. When I first came here, I was, they'll come here. And people have definitely given me the eye. I hope you guys have not faced that as y'all have walked around.
No, definitely not.
We want it to be a happy tourist place where people are like, hey, how you doing? Come on in, have a cup of coffee, have a soda,
Yeah. So if you were to only come here then, have you noticed that people have become more accommodating over time? Or is it as more people have moved in, they don't really have that sense of suspicion?
I think the natives are getting smaller and smaller in population, and sometimes that's going to make people get more defensive and fight more. But I think that they're the minority now, so there have been changes in the county. I joke and say, I am a come here, but my children are native. Mm-hmm. So, don't mess with my kids. They are from Gloucester. So you can tell me I can live here 95 years and I haven't lived here long enough. Now, I run into people all the time. They'll tell me how many generations their family goes back. And, it's all a good thing because that is pride in place. They may feel like they have a little bit more ownership or something than you do, or than I do, but it's still great that they are so proud of the fact that their family has been here that many years. And when I moved here, I had lived on Duke of Gloucester Street my senior year of high school. And I learned how to say Gloucester, and I learned how to spell Gloucester, and it was like, oh, this is meant to be, and it was really neat. It was in Roanoke, Duke of Gloucester there. Had no idea I'd ever be coming here. I'd never heard of Gloucester County. So I come here, and I find out that two of the most prominent names in the county are Jenkins and Hogg. Well, my grandmother was a Jenkins, and my great-grandmother was a Hogg. So I was like, hey, I've come home. I'm probably related to all y'all anyway.
What was your experience like facing the reality of, did it die?
Yeah.
Nah. That's why we got two. What was the experience like facing people that are suspicious of come here's when you first got here?
I think it's been a little bit harder on me.
Why's that?
I'm a single parent. I've had 2 children out of wedlock in Gloucester County. I faced some discrimination that other people didn't. But I made my bed. I made decisions. I'm not going to let a community put a scarlet letter on me, and so I just kind of felt like my work would stand up for itself, and I think it has. I've had written in the paper a couple of different times I should be fired because of personal stuff.
Really?
And yeah. And when I tell people that I grew up with, or tell people in the community, they cannot believe that there would be such prejudices. But there are. But they're the minority. And I think most people who've gotten to know me, even if they may not agree with me on a lot of things, they still respect me. And so we get along fine. Mm-hmm. But it's a shocker. I had an argument. I had a number of arguments with one of our local newspaper folks, and one time I just was telling her how much good she could do. Just think about your paper and all the good things you could do versus the bad things that you allow to go on. And we had a very much a difference of opinion because they have this thing again, small town. You don't have in other places. Supposedly Williamsburg has it, which is amazing as big as it is, but where you can do a reader's call-in. And you can say anything you want to say anonymously. I saw this minister, or this minister's having an affair. I saw this person doing this and that. And you can just say whatever you want. And because I work in county government, they print my name where they won't say other people's names. And she just said, you're in this, you're a county official. And I'm like, but I'm not an elected official.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up to have my personal life in the newspaper. And, but they do that. So there's, good and bad to any community. And I would say that's probably a little bit of an uglier side of the county, but it's, I think, gotten much smaller because of so many come-heres. But people still read that paper. And some people believe what they read. Look at what happens with blogs and stuff. And people jump on the bandwagon, and it's like, oh my gosh, get to the real truth of something.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It seems to me like Parks and Rec and preservationists can kind of bridge a gap between people that have a very localized and land-based pride in place, and then come-heres that want to enjoy recreation.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of be everything to everybody. The other thing that we deal with is that if I have something, my needs are met. And so you have these people who have beautiful waterfront properties and waterfront access. Well, do they see the need for a public boat landing? And are they willing to support that? So we've had to kind of work through and educate people about the masses. I've been in front of boards of supervisors who said we don't need a soccer field. When I was a kid, we played in a cow pasture. I literally had that said to me. And it's like, well, is that good enough? Do you settle for that? And that's been going on, that same attitude has been going on with the new middle school. And watching on the outsides the arguments of, well, we can just put up this or that and metal roof, and it's like, well, is that good enough? And I think about those gorgeous historic buildings we have. And they're here from 1766. What if we'd have just slapped up, oh man, you can just put a little shed up and it'll be fine. It wouldn't be here. So I'm hoping we can do things of preserving the land, preserving our historic buildings, and meeting lots of community needs, and that people will provide for those others, even if they don't have.
I mean, that honestly sounds like a class issue.
Yeah, well, we're getting further and further apart between, there's less middle class, the haves and the have-nots, the spread.
Yeah, I mean, do you see that in Gloucester? Like, do you have to deal with that in your job?
We are down in numbers for our youth sports. Part of that we have a decline in our enrollment, so there's some legitimate demographic changes going on, but what we're hearing are the parents saying, I can't do both sports. We can only do soccer once a year, or I can't afford for my kid to do gymnastics and ballet. I have my other lives that I live. I work part-time for Walmart. So I work every Sunday at Walmart, and I feel that really keeps me grounded. And I see all kinds of things there. And then I hear the reports, like going into department head meetings, and the two jive completely, that when they call me up to the cash register to help out, I am seeing so many people who are on the food stamp program called SNAP. I mean, I can't believe how many people, just one after another, coming through on SNAP. And then I go to a department head meeting and I hear from our social services director how the numbers are off the charts. So I know the people in need, that population is growing. Then I'll hear about some of the other things that are going on in the wealthier people, and they're out there. And we have some beautiful estates in the county, and some well-to-do people and part-time residents. And so, I think it's here, and we are like Virginia and like the country, that most of people are just chanting one after another to lower taxes. That's what our candidates are running on. I will not raise the taxes. I promise not to raise the taxes. And yet we have these people who don't have. And if we are completely what we call in Parks and Rec pay to play, if we were not subsidized by tax dollars, our numbers would dwindle, and there's a whole lot of children who would not be able to participate in activities. So I'm hoping that our tax decreases don't hurt us any further.
Do you feel like a new park does have a lot of donations that's subsidized, like you said, does that help kids and people from all classes use public facilities? It
should. And I think statistically, surveys show that people want to have parks near them, even if they don't use them. So even if you have your own waterfront estate or whatever, you want something out there. Maybe you want a garden, maybe you want soccer fields, whatever your vision is for the green space of your community, the people do value them, even if they don't go to them. And then those who do use them, we should have all classes there. And I think one of the ways that I see that, and this is maybe stereotyping a little bit too much, but is with the gardens and the botanical interest. I think that they're, from the experience that I've had with the donors and the interest, it is our well-to-do part of the community. Now, the juxtaposition or whatever is fun with this one is that we now have a demonstration garden that's gone in that has a vegetable garden to help the indigent. So here I'm trying to push for this beautiful wedding garden that will bring revenue in as people rent, and looking at, just having all these beautiful, beautiful flowers, and then right over yonder is vegetable garden where we're growing to give to the poor. Mm-hmm. So that's very accommodating of all classes.
Yeah, absolutely. The analogy you made that was really poignant was about putting a metal roof on a preservation building. What do you think that preservationists can do, and I know that you're allied with them on a lot of different levels, what can they do that demonstrates an understanding of, like we were talking about, the times?
I think we have to reach out in multiple ways because people learn and appreciate in multiple ways. There's some things you can do on a website that will educate people, and then there's other people who make the computer. The digs that are held publicly and inviting people to come in and see, I think are great. Workshops, that people will come in. Maybe somebody wants, like Fairfield's done, like how to do different windows or something in restoration. I think those attract people. The stories and stuff, I think people, or they go in and they to our museum and, grandma's attic kind of museum and say, well, my grandma had one of those. No, I identify with that. So, it's kind of reaching to that heartstring of all the different people in many ways as possible. And I think Gloucester has that happening, whether it's the history trails or history tours, history crawl, I guess you would call it, going around to the different sites and even doing things like theatrical performances at Rosewell a couple of years ago, having the haunted play there, and I was so mad that I missed it, and the barbecues that are held there, the different fundraisers. You got to get people there as much as you can. I am really, really excited about what we're doing with Battle of the Hook, and I hope it comes to fruition where I need to be able to dedicate more time to it to really push it and nurture it, and I'm not. I'm skimping by because it's being pulled to me different directions. We have an opportunity to do something very unique. We have access to the 160,000 artifacts that were a part of the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, the VEMS building expansion. So this is from prehistoric to 20th century, stuff, but a lot of Civil War and probably some 21st century later too. But anyway, great artifacts. And they're sitting in storage. And the sign of the times, the state says, okay, if you want to send that stuff here, you're going to have to pay because we can't afford, the state doesn't have money to hold your artifacts, right? You got to pay. And then VEMS is saying, why do we want to pay you all that money? We don't have the money to do that. We're not about paying the state from one state office to another. So they ended up building a storage room, and all these artifacts are sitting in storage. They haven't been conserved. And so we, as a part of this Battle of the Hook, Revolutionary War reenactment, are fundraising to conserve between a dozen and 20 artifacts and then have them on display at the event. And at the same time of having the Fairfield group out there doing a dig of a place that I know Dave said that he's been wanting to get to. And so he knows there's some well site or whatever. So when the public comes in to think, oh, I'm going to watch guys run around and shoot at each other and play war, and won't that be fun and fascinating? They can see the archaeological dig, learn about what was really here, and then walk into this. And Warner Hall itself is just a gorgeous estate, and they are allowing the West Wing to be used as a miniature museum for the event. So you'll go into the historic building where the general public doesn't go into the building that day. They're on the grounds, but you don't go in the house. We don't just want anybody roaming around from this event. So they're sort of standing guard of whether somebody needs to come in or not, but they're going to allow the public to come in. And they will have on display David Wagner's paintings, which were of what happened in Gloucester during the Rev War and the Battle of the Hook, and then go into the side room and see these artifacts. So see the dig, and that's the kind of stuff that again will have lasting impacts, and that my hope is that then people are going to say, well, where do these artifacts come from? They're going to learn that we need another $25,000 to conserve the other artifacts, and because nobody has the money to do it. And maybe somebody's going to say, we can't let that happen, and so I hope it will go on. And then what we've done too, if we've conserved these things that can then be transferred to our museum and become part of a permanent exhibit on the Rev War.
Wow.
So I'm blessed in my job that I get to do fun things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm working right now on trying to find grant resource to study Woodville. And you look behind you, the collections we have, the pot up top, the bottles up top. We know of at least 3 home sites, but I want to tell the story of the Woodville plantation. I don't know whether anybody has mentioned this to you or not about sort of the controversy over the name of the park.
A little bit.
One of the most controversial meetings I've ever been to with Board of Supervisors. It had been Woodville Plantation Park. A child had named it in a contest after what the original property had been. It could have come with anything, but that was, the best thing. The kid got a $50 check. It became that name. It was never, ever questioned. And years into the park's development, it's part of our ordinances, it's listed, it's all throughout, it's been in grant applications. A Board of Supervisors member brought it to the attention that he thought it was a racist name and the park name needed to be changed. So, all kinds of stuff happens, and the end of the story is after a packed house meeting of division of every black person got up and spoke and said, I want the park's name changed. And every white person got up and said, leave history as it is. This was a plantation, don't change the name. The very last speaker was a young guy in his 20s, white guy, and he got up and said, after listening to all this, I'm siding with them. It needs to be changed. And the board changed it. So we had to go through all of our ordinances. Everything had to be changed. And my argument was, I didn't want the park to feel exclusive, and that was part of what the people were saying, is they got up and they said, when I go and drive down the road and I see this fancy subdivision, it's so-and-so plantation, I don't feel welcome. It brings back memories and exclusion and things like that, and that's just not where I want to go, and I don't think a park should have the name plantation. And even though we have a Chip Oaks Plantation, which is a state park across the river, and but it bothered people. But my flip side of that was, it was a plantation. I went and did research. I followed up on research that had already been done that named the 63 slaves that worked that plantation. And so my elected officials, my bosses changed the name. I'm fine with that, but I want to tell the story. I don't have time to do all the research. The guy who owned the plantation, his papers were over at William & Mary. So I went over, did the white glove examination, and I was reading things like how he traded slaves with this other person and borrowed for this and that, and I will give one schmuck, the smock, I can't think of the name at the time, but I'll give that and 2 pairs of woolen socks, and just reading stuff, and I'm like, my God, these are people, and they're trading them like animals. And, this was real. So I'm hoping to get a grant where somebody's going to be able to do the full research, and then we will produce a monument or some sort of wayside exhibit that will talk about the history of the site. Mm-hmm. And then we can show, what it was like. And then from my understanding, and again, this is why I want to hire somebody to do a grant, is after the Civil War, the plantation was burned. There's a story there that the guy's off to war, his daughter's on the porch step, the Union soldiers come and try to steal the horse, she shoots at them. In retaliation, they burn the home down. That needs to be validated better.
Yeah.
Because supposedly she was hauled off in chains and held in Yorktown in jail till the end of the war. But I've heard that same story about another site. So I don't doubt that did happen, but did it happen from Woodville or did it happen from another plantation further south, and all that kind of stuff. So it all needs to be validated. But after the war, the guy comes home, he's broke. He's lost a son, or lost a brother. I think his son was wounded. He doesn't have a home. He has to go live up in the northern part of the county. He doesn't live long. And his estate is in disarray. He owned a lot of land in the county, and this guy was the executor, and I think he blew it. It took years, and the land gets subdivided, and African Americans end up owning these different farm vignettes or whatever. And then they lost them through not paying taxes and things. So I want to tell that story too. You know what, it's ugly, but it's true. If you don't pay your taxes, your house can get auctioned. So like I said, I'm blessed to be able to work on exciting projects like that bring history out.
Yeah. And what do you see as the long-term role that preservationists can play in Gloucester moving forward?
Well, I sure don't want to lose anything of value that we regret. You know, I wish I had my Barbies all in their little cases and I could put them on eBay, that I hadn't destroyed them. And then, you know, people who've lost their trading cards, you know, and all the different things. I've still got a few Pokemon cards from my kids that I'm thinking maybe someday they'll be worth something. We have some great resources, and I don't want to lose anything more. So I think the preservation is, you know, is to study what we have, know what we have, educate the public on what we have, and help figure out ways to keep it. And that doesn't mean preserving everything, you know, because we must have had 50 bags of oyster shells down in this one building that, you know, had been part of it. Okay, well, how many bags of oyster shells do you need? You know, there's got to be some decisions too. And so this is one of the things we've been facing on one of the committees that several of us have served on, is this new ordinance that allows you, when a developer comes in, to require a phase one archaeological study if there's an indication that there's something that happened there. So you have to look at this sort of base map. Is there an indication of something or not? And then make them do this. And there was just so much back and forth over what's history, because every day everything's getting older. So a building that was the annex for the courthouse is now over 50 years old, and that's our modern building. But according to the state, it's a historic building now. So I hope preservationists can be reasonable too, and I'd rather err on the side of not being reasonable personally, but you know, I don't want people to get like the tree hugger thing where people turn against you and they think, you know, you're trying to do too much. And there's, as much as it can be saved and it's appropriate, I hope that'll happen in Gloucester.
Can it play a role in the tourist economy?
Absolutely. Our marketing effort is based on history and outdoor recreation. Those are the two things we have to sell. And we are trying to continually develop those assets and make more things available. You know, other localities have different museums. You know, we don't have the Virginia Living Museum with wildlife and stuff here. We've got a kayak tour now that we didn't have, our kayak trail system that we didn't have before. So we've got this waterway. How do we get people on it? How do they, and on that Blue Ways Trail, we have a history thing so that you can read about what happened.
From your boat?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and we wanted to study, because there are, you know, if you're on the water, that's where the plantations, that's where people access those. Those were the front yards.
Yeah.
Because there were no roads. And so we want people to know about it. And we also included the wildlife component. So if they're looking for osprey or whatever fish they're going to see in that area, or, you know, that kind of stuff. So we try to have that comprehensively. Other outdoor recreation opportunities we're going to pursue. We're doing a new mountain biking trail. And it may be one of these skills type ones with all the crazy boards and jumps and stuff, because, you know, that makes people want to drive here and bring their bike and come here. And on the history part, we have the Court Circle as our gym, Main Street as, you know, the annex to the Court Circle, Rosewell, but that's limited. And we don't have that many other things. And I am hoping, I mean, Walter Reed's birthplace, prime example, great little thing, you know, great little nook and cranny to go to, but it's not open to the public, but on a rare occasion. We can't market that. We can't say, come see Walter Reed's birthplace and frustrate people that they go and knock on the door and they can't get in. So we do market it, but it's limited. So I hope we will have new and more historical sites open up.
Do you have your eye on anything in particular?
Not from a historical. I have to think about that one for a while. From an outdoor recreation we do, because, and it has some history to it, but next to Land's End, the county acquired through a donation of, the county didn't, Public Access Authority did, 97 acres on the Severn River. Huge, huge gift. But probably off the top of my head, I think about, from a historical thing, the easiest ones to get hold of are already in public ownership. So Tyndall's Point Park is underutilized. It's hard to get to. You gotta go through Robin Hood's barn to get to it, you know, around Robin Hood's barn to get to it. We used to have direct Route 17 access. When they widened the highway, we lost it. So you gotta go through the neighborhood. But there's some things that we could do there. There really are. From putting some cannons out that kids want to crawl on, the replicas, just taking the site back, showing the difference. We know that that's what it looked like in Civil War, but visually, what did it look like during the Rev War? How different was it? I mean, think about when you drive through, across the Coleman Bridge, and you're driving right in the middle of a fort. It's on both sides of you, and 95% or higher of the people who cross the Coleman Bridge probably don't know that. So if we can develop that, because it's already in public ownership. Where Wacomico would be the next highest on my list, and with the conservation easement preservation easement, that's been provided over part of that property, that's a great thing.
Yeah. Did you have anything you want to ask there? Anything you want to add?
No, I'm sure I talk too much as it is, but
Not at all.